In the year 1989, James Jenkins from Ahoskie, North Carolina, a star high school and college football player, and Michael Clinton, a native of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, local legend and musician, met at a UPS facility. Little did they know, through a connection with Jesus Christ, that relationship would last for 34 years. This is their story.
So how long have you guys known each other?
Man, since what, 1989? 1989.
Yes.
And I just calculated it. It's 34 years that we've been knowing each other. That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
How did y'all meet?
Yeah, we actually we worked at the same place. We worked at UPS, and we actually began to work together. I think at first Mike was on he was loading trucks and I was unloading trucks.
Mm-hmm.
And then we began to work together more on the sort out, so we really became real close at that particular point.
Yeah. And I remember when I first met James, he had this nice little tight flat top. He used to drive a Ford 5.0 Mustang.
Yes.
He didn't have like a pretty boy vibe, but he had like one of those country boys that's made it to the big city.
When I first met Mike, it was really something that stood out about him, and you can tell that God had his hands on him, and that, it's just something different about him.
One night before starting his late shift, James had a personal encounter with Christ. It immediately changed his life. Little did he know that it will also change Mike's life.
I didn't quite understand it because I hadn't really come into the full knowledge of what those type of encounters would actually experience, But what I was able to understand was, after that encounter, the change in his life.
Yes.
And that change is what drew me to him, because I'll say to myself, okay, I've been in church all my life. My stuff, it's like I'm just going through the cycles. Ain't no changes, But when I saw what happened to him and how quickly his life began to become transformed, I'm like, man, that's something different. He done caught a hold of something different, because it ain't happening for me. And so I just began to study his life, and I'm like, man, I want what this guy got. And at one point, I was even like somewhat envious, like, okay, man, how he gonna get it, quicker than I did,
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I just came to the point, I just had a radical transformation where I just gave my life over to the Lord, and his spirit just fell on me. It was just so immense. I mean, my body was trembling. I couldn't, it's like I got cold. It felt like I could feel a hand just coming through my body like this and cleaning me out.
He caught a hold to something that I realized that I needed. And so I began to glean from his life from a distance. And then more and more, I began to see what he was doing. And I said, I gotta have that. And we would go to Biscuit House, and we would talk about the word and, that type of thing. And so that's how the bond of our relationship, it's kind of like a marriage.
Oh yeah.
When you get married, the bond of the marriage is what happens spiritually first. That's what keeps the longevity of a relationship. What happens in spirit, and so in some ways, that's what happened with me and James. It wasn't that we were going out to the club or going to the sports bar or just hanging out, going to the golf range or doing manly things. That wasn't the thing that caused our bond. It was that spiritual connection. Right. And so that's why we've been able to maintain a good brotherly relationship over the last 34 years, because of what happened first in the spirit. James has been there for me every phase of my life.
And vice versa.
Every phase of my life, good, bad, and ugly. He has been there for me. And he didn't know a whole lot of the ugly stuff before I met him.
Yeah.
But from the day that he came into my life at UPS in 1989, he has been there through every moment. When I went through having children, when I got married, had kids, James was there. When I went through divorce, it was James Jenkins, and I was down at the altar bawling, that came out of the TV room, from upstairs and began just to console me in front of thousands of people. It was James Jenkins. So this thing is, and even to this day.
And it brings us to where we are here today.
Yeah. I mean, our families, our kids grew up together. I mean, of course, with Regina having the daycare, Precious one, both of our kids, Michael and Matthew, they both went to, James and Regina's, daycare center because we trusted them, and they were amazing business owners and ran an amazing school. And they're all close to the same age, and like I said, we grew up we was in the same neighborhood for several years.
Sometimes you tell people that you love them, and love, contrary to what we might think sometimes in relationships, is not really what holds that relationship together.
Right.
And whether it be a spouse or just be a friend or a relative, so basically it's three things that I learned. And that is, you gotta have knowledge, which is gonna be information. You gotta have an understanding, which is gonna be comprehension about that person. And then you're gonna have wisdom, where you can actually apply what you know.
Right.
So you gotta study people. Mike and I had a lot in common.
Yeah.
And we, to this day, and I really began to study him. I study people. And that's, how I'm able to relate. And, God will give you some wisdom.
Right.
He'll give you knowledge, and understanding of what it takes to make that relationship strong.
Like loyalty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not loyal to a fault, but I'm loyal to James, man.
Yeah. And vice versa.
And I know James, he'll fight for me.
Yeah.
He'll defend me. Because he know the real person.
Oh yeah.
And so that means a lot. They go a long way too. That loyalty, man.